Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Enterprise Bank and Trust was founded by entrepreneurs with core focus of serving privately owned small and medium-sized businesses who have a story to tell. Enterprise Bank's commitment is to listen, learn, and guide clients to a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank, together, there's no stopping you. My name is Joel Goldberg, coming to you from the Kansas City Audio Visual Studios. They create engaging spaces. Check them out at kcav.com. I can connect you with Alan Landever over there. I've got a phenomenal guest, a good friend today, and one that, quite frankly, I've learned about because when I started my speaking business a few years ago, my friend Casey Wright, who owns a recruiting firm here in town, chief of staff, said to me, "You got to network." And he claims that I said, I don't remember this, but I believe it. He claims I said, "What is networking?" Which sounds like an absolutely ridiculous thing at this point to have said, because it's what I do every single day. I'm excited right now to be joined by one of the great networkers in Kansas City, my good friend, Alana Muller. How are you, Alana?
I'm so great. I'm so delighted to see you. It's been a minute, right? I mean, with all this isolation going on, we haven't been able to hang out.
I know we have not been able to do coffees, lunches, or coffees, although we lived through our kids who are friends. The funny story here is when I first met Alana, and I knew her name, I'd heard about her, and I came home. I think I was getting ready to do coffee with you or something. This is a number of years ago, and I said to my wife Susan, I said, "Hey, you know about this Alana Muller, right?" She goes, "Her son hangs out at our house." I'm like, I'm the baseball guy that's gone, and I'm the dad that should pay more attention and doesn't. I'm usually the last to know these things, and so.
Well, I have to tell you that I think one of Ian's secret agendas for coming to hang out at the Goldbergs is to hang out with Joel and Susan.
I gotta say that there were nights pre-pandemic where we would have a house full of kids, and Ian, who I see as being a very mature kid, would be like, "Yeah, I don't feel like hanging out with them anymore," and so he'd just come up and have deep discussions with us. See, he's already networking and learning from his mom and maybe
That's
from his
good.
dad. I should point out too that Alana is a board member at Enterprise Bank and Trust, which I forgot. So it's not like I said, "Hey, Enterprise, give us a board member." Really, what I you know what, Alana, I would say I'm a little bit guilty in the sense of not bringing friends onto this podcast because I'm always networking and meeting new people, and so sometimes I forget to circle back. But you've made a career of networking and teaching people how to do that, among other things. And so my first question to you is, how much has networking changed in these last 7 or 8 months?
Uh, yeah, I mean it's an important thing to talk about. It's changed, right? I mean, we are doing a lot more isolating these days, and especially with the cold weather coming, I think we're going to be getting back to that. For those of us who have maybe gotten out a little bit more, met people at outdoor cafes or restaurants, that might change again. And so, it's certainly changed. I will tell you from a business perspective, in March, when literally all of my business started to go away, which I know that you can relate to.
Yeah.
I thought that my business was gone. I thought, is networking relevant anymore? Is my business relevant? The wonderful, incredible, fabulous news is that it's all still really relevant. It's all still really, really important. But we've certainly learned how to flex, how to adapt in this environment. And so we're doing a lot of this, right? I mean, so whether it's Zoom or WebEx or some other conferencing platform, GoToMeeting or Microsoft Teams, we're finding ways to adapt. And so I think networking continues. Sometimes it's more of a 20-minute Zoom call as opposed to a 30-minute or a 1 hour coffee. And maybe we're bringing our own, right? So we all have our own drinks that
Yeah.
we're bringing along, lots of happy hours going on and different kinds of events. But the good news is that they're still going on. We have certainly learned how to kind of flex that muscle, figure out how to stay connected. And frankly, I'm so grateful for video conferencing
Mhm.
platforms because to me, they have been the saving grace during all this time that we can actually see people face to face, even if we can't actually be together in person.
And it's evolving too, to me. I mean, I feel like when it first started, it was exactly what you said. "Oh my gosh, how am I going to do my
Yeah.
job?" And then it almost became I think we sometimes live in this black and white world. At least I do. Like, I'm an all or none type of guy, and I have
Hmm.
to remind myself that it's okay to live in that world of gray, and oftentimes that's a good place to live. And so, it was how are we going to do this? We can't get out. And then it felt like every single minute of the day there was some kind of like big group happy hour going on, and that became exhausting. And if you were doing some drinking on that one, that became physically bad too. And then to me, I feel like somewhere in the middle, you just sort of found that groove of the
Hmm.
right way to go about having these meetings. How long were they going to be, as you mentioned it? Also scheduling time in between, because it was like
Oh
button to
yeah.
button to button. There was no car ride, so to speak. How much has this evolved?
Right. Our drive time is gone, right? We don't have to drive from meeting to meeting. You're right. We simply leave one meeting and enter the next room, the next Zoom room, the next WebEx room. Yeah, that has changed. And it's interesting. I have a lot of clients who talk about this notion of Zoom fatigue, which is sort of the generic term for I'm really tired of sitting on conference
Mhm.
calls or video conference calls. So we talk about strategies for managing that and mitigating that exhaustion that happens. And I think the exhaustion comes because when you're on a video call, you don't know who might be looking at you when. We've kind of got that Brady Bunch thing going on, or Hollywood Squares, if you will. And so we're constantly on. We don't know if somebody's looking at us. And so it's one of those deals where we have to be even more present than we might be in person. There can't really be a lot of multitasking going on. We don't have that drive time to process what we've just been through. And so I'm encouraging people to actually schedule in those little breaks, even if it's 5, 10, 15 minutes, to also stand up and stretch. I mean, I can tell you, I've been sitting on the same brown couch since March 4th. And so, we have to get up, we have to physically move around just to sort of re energize ourselves, to give ourselves that time to process what we've just experienced, what we've just discussed, what our action items or deliverables must be. And so that is definitely changing. And the truth is, as I think back, I used to call that I call it the wall of meetings. When you look at your calendar and it's literally just completely filled with meetings, I used to call it the wall. And really, during the time of COVID, I think that wall has actually been built up. And I think it's because there is no drive time, there is no transition time. And so I'm recommending to people that you schedule in that transition period, just to give yourself a time to stand up, stretch, walk around a little bit, and get mentally prepared for that next call.
And the other part to that too is that when you talk about sitting on that couch, like you could sit in one spot in what might have been three, four, five meetings in a day to different locations around town and have never left other than maybe going to get a drink or go to the bathroom, and that's it. It's not healthy. And
Right.
and that to me is a lot of the Zoom fatigue, is
Mhm.
just staring into what eventually becomes feeling like you're staring into space all day long.
Yeah, it's true. And, I do think that we can even improve upon that. We can improve upon the way that we present ourselves in that virtual setting. I think, too frequently we forget this is work. I mean, you and I are at work right now. So
Mhm.
it's for me, it's a blast to see my friend and to be on your show. But this is also work. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do is to treat each day like you're going to work. Get up, get dressed, groom yourself, shower, do your hair, your makeup, whatever it is that you do to get ready in the morning, shave, and get dressed as if you're going to work. I mean, I know, and I'm sure in your world you experience this a lot, but we all remember that funny broadcast where there was a journalist and he was wearing a business suit on top and I think boxer shorts on the bottom, and he didn't realize that we could see his legs. And I wanted to say, buddy, take a look, but the truth is you should be prepared for your day. You should have the proper lighting. Make sure that you have lights in your virtual space, whatever that is. Make sure you're not backlit. All the good techniques, and including the etiquette of being on a video conference. You don't want, I'll never forget, I was on a call not too many weeks ago, so even deep into this time, and literally I saw the spouse of the person that I was talking with getting prepared to take a shower, and literally the camera was moved sort of just in time. But I have to tell you, it was disconcerting. And so I think we have to be mindful that in this video space, there's some etiquette that we have to keep in mind, whether that's turn off our cameras at the appropriate time, keep ourselves on mute when we're not speaking. But there are ways, I think, to enhance even the relationship building that's happening in this virtual setting.
I will say that we did a lot of pregame interviews for our pregame show for Royals, and we would do those interviews from home because those players would be made available, 4 hours before the game, and there was no
Yeah.
reason to go to the stadium when there was no locker room to go into. A lot of times the team was out of town and we were here, so we would pre-tape those interviews from the house. And the question we would have before we started, and I'm right here, and Jeff Montgomery's at his place, and then the player would either be at Kauffman Stadium or in Cleveland or wherever they're at, and the first thing would always be, "You wearing pants?" "Nope, I'm not wearing pants." "You wearing pants?" And have the jacket and tie on. Now let's not get too, let's not get away from the let's not go to the bad images here.
Right, exactly.
I was wearing shorts, but it was like, why am I putting dress pants on at 2 when I don't have to go to the stadium until 5? And
Right.
so it's quickly throw the jacket and tie on. But to your point, be presentable. And actually, you made a good point too. And everybody's going to be different on this, but I found that during the pandemic, up until baseball started, that I grew this big old beard, at least for me, and I sort of wore it as a badge of honor, and it was fun. Like, and I even thought about, hey, maybe I'll keep it when baseball returns. But then I thought, this beard to me felt like the pandemic. It felt like the
Yeah.
shutdown. And I don't want to go back to it. Like it was a sign of being locked in the house and the way things were. And it was almost like there's a mental thing of having a routine
Mhm.
and saying, hey, I am getting dressed. I am going to shave. I am going to go and not feel like I'm back to living, in a fraternity house or in some crappy apartment in college, like we are adults that have things to do.
Yeah, you know what? Mark did the same thing. People are doing things like that, and I do think it's almost like we can see the phases of the pandemic, the
Yes.
phases that we've been through. You can almost mark them by the day. And he did the same thing. And we took a picture every day, and it was very funny to go from no beard to complete beard and then back to none. But he did it the night before he returned to his office, and so I do think that some of those rites of passage or those lines of demarcation are actually fun and they keep us sane during all this madness. But I also think you're right. We need to get back to our lives and we need to recognize, in this case, based on our topic today, that relationships continue to be important. Relationships continue to thrive and be, first of all, established or created even during the pandemic to be nurtured and furthered upon, even in a time when we're doing a lot more sitting at home than we would normally do in sort of out in the world. One of the biggest things that has changed, and so I think it's really incumbent on each of us to make sure that it doesn't harm us, is we're not having what I call collisions. They talk about collisions in entrepreneurship, that when you are out and about in the world and you accidentally run into somebody, that's what's termed as a collision. And those accidental meetings, those meetings at the water cooler, if you will, those happen. The happenstance that occurs when we by coincidence run into somebody at a coffee shop and lo and behold they have the next great idea and we're in on it. That's not happening right now, and so we almost have to be more intentional about creating not collisions necessarily, but making sure that we're interacting with people that we're not interacting with every single day, but sort of mixing it up, continuing to build that list in our mind, or I hope on paper actually, of the people that we want to either connect with or reconnect with, because I think especially during this time it's important to maintain those interactions.
Alana is the author of the book Coffee Lunch Coffee, and her website has everything you could want to know on the topic of networking and more. It's coffeelunchcoffee.com. And she speaks, she trains, you name it, you've got your hand in a lot, which I love. And I the flip side to some of this from a networking standpoint, and I'm curious your take on this, is that because so much has gone digital, I've seen a massive rise in cold calling or people reaching out with really, really poor etiquette. Like basically, it's a disqualifier for me immediately if you are sending me a message with your Calendly link saying let's schedule, and I don't even know you. It feels like people are getting more desperate. So I'm curious your take on that. But the
Mhm.
flip side of that is I think it opens up a window for those that are doing things the right way.
I absolutely agree with you. I do think that there is some poor etiquette going on. And so you're right. For those people who are doing it the right way, the respectful, the appropriate way, I think it opens up all kinds of possibilities. The one thing I want to say is I do feel like we're in a time where some people are feeling a sense of desperation. And my first request is just take a deep breath. I know that this is a really tough time for so many of us. There are some challenges, and some days are a lot gloomier than other days. And so the one thing I hope we can all do is give people a little bit of grace. But by the same token, you're right. When we're getting sort of these cold outreaches, whether it's by LinkedIn, I mean, I sort of joke about it, but I get all these LinkedIn requests and it says, I see we know a lot of the same people, or I see we have a lot in common. And honestly, even by a sort of a quick read of their LinkedIn profile, we have nothing in common. We're both human beings, and that's good. And I think we're both professionals, but that's kind of where the commonalities end, at least by my quick read of their profile. And so I really think it's important to have a clear connection, a reason to connect that is mutually beneficial, not just beneficial for the person who's conducting the outreach. And I do think that for when there's kind of an etiquette fail, people are a lot less willing and interested in connecting. But to your earlier idea that those of us who are doing it well are getting the results that we're seeking, that we want to connect, that we're interested in keeping and maintaining that connection.
I was lucky enough last week to be able to interview Simon Sinek for the
Oh,
Helzberg
good.
Entrepreneurial Mentorship Program. He was amazing, but he made this so simple observation that I think so many of us, all of us, can forget it sometimes. Of basically, and it was about building trust.
Yeah.
You wouldn't walk up to someone and say, "Can I be your friend? Can we be friends?" Maybe back in like kindergarten, when you were asking the boy or the girl out or something like that, right? But that's the version of what we're talking about here on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. It takes time to build relationships. You don't just say, "Hey, can we do business together? Hey, can I have your money?" There is a process to this.
100%. I talk about it being a series of touch points that, I hope this isn't the last time we're together, that I hope this is one touch point among many, and that as we come together each new time, we're continuing to build trust, we're continuing to actually build a relationship. And so, when I see your number come through on my caller ID, I want to answer it because we already have an authentic, meaningful connection. We're not faking it. And that one touch point doesn't mean necessarily that we know each other well, but it really does have to be built and fostered and nurtured over time.
I love that, and it's one that I think everybody can learn from and continue to grow with too. And I love what you said too, Alana, about grace, and not just giving grace to others, but giving grace to yourself too, because we all are under a lot of pressure right now.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, time for the baseball themed questions brought to you by Kissick Construction, trusted team, reliable partner. Check them out at kissickco.com. Professionally speaking, you had a very long and successful career, and that using that word that we all use nowadays of pivot, you pivoted a while back and have found this beautiful, amazing career with Coffee Lunch Coffee and everything that you do for so many. What's the biggest home run you've hit in your career?
The biggest home run, I mean, that for me is an easy answer, and that was discovering my purpose. And I know it sounds kind of big and squishy and a little soft, but I have to tell you, it's pretty hard hitting. I had been running a company for the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation called Kauffman Fast Track, and I loved that company. I loved running it. It felt like a privilege, and it was. I was invited though by one of my clients to join them in Vail, Colorado, for a weekend retreat. And what they wanted to show me was their approach to entrepreneurial education. And so I went, and I have to tell you, I went a little bit reluctantly. It was hard for me to imagine sort of enjoying the weekend because I didn't want to give up the weekend with my family. But I have to tell you, by the end of that weekend, they had me in hook, line, and sinker. And the final exercise of the weekend was to state our life's purpose. And had they told me on Friday that on Sunday I'd be stating my life's purpose, I probably would have left because I didn't believe that was possible. And yet the facilitator said, I'm going to give you 30 minutes and in 5 words or fewer, I'd like you to state your life's purpose. And I have to tell you, I was done in 30 seconds. And the facilitator said, okay, hotshot, I can see you're done. Before we've started, what did you write? And I said, my life's purpose is to connect, inspire, and empower community. And she said, yes, it is. You can get your stuff and go. And I burst into tears. And What I realized is that once you have a life's purpose, once you know what your personal mission statement is, you want to get on about the business of pursuing it. And very thankfully, I was able to do that. And through Coffee Lunch Coffee, I've been able to realize that purpose.
That's amazing. And, finding that purpose is not easy, even if you were able to do it quickly. Some maybe can do it more quickly than others, but once you find it, it is a
Oh, yeah.
life-changing and powerful thing. So congratulations for that truly life-changing moment
Thank you.
for you. Now, how about the swing and miss? Because that's what we learn from. How about a swing and a miss?
Yeah, a swing and a miss. It's interesting, as you know, when an entrepreneur goes out on his or her own, there's kind of this realization that you no longer have a steady income stream, that things are going to change a little bit. And so when I decided to go out on my own without an income stream, it was really important to me to find opportunities. And so very early on, I got an opportunity to work for um, an organization in San Francisco, and I was very excited about it. It was a very large contract, and I thought, okay, this is it. I've made it. I'm so excited. I have a client, it's a real client, and I have to tell you, the owner of the company was somebody I couldn't tolerate, and I couldn't stomach the way that she treated other people. And what I very quickly discovered is that her approach to running her business. Um, it just flew in the face of my personal values. She was awful to her team members. She belittled them in front of other people. She yelled at people. She was unreliable. And it was a weight. It was a serious weight on my shoulders to be working with her on this project. And a friend of mine here in Kansas City we were hanging around during that time together, and she said, I have to tell you that since you took that opportunity, you just haven't been yourself. And she says, and I'm telling you this from a place of love, but I'm worried about you. She said, you're just not even yourself. You don't seem like yourself. You seem anxious and depressed and agitated. What's going on? And so I explained to her what was going on. I said, but it's a huge client. I can't give up the revenue. It would be irresponsible. And she said, if you would consider giving up that client, I suspect you'll get 3 more clients to make up any revenue lost. And so after another sort of bad interaction with that business owner, I fired her. I said, I can't work with you anymore. And it was difficult and painful and terrifying, terrifying, because it was such a large contract. She was shocked and hateful and angry. But I have to tell you, Joel, it was like the weight of the world was lifted. And interestingly, within 3 weeks' time, I had made back all of the potentially lost revenue with other clientele that I liked a whole lot more, that I could get on board with their approach to running their businesses. And the thing is, this was not a matter of disagreeing on policy. It was not about politics. It was not about differences of opinion. It was differences of really personal values, ethics, principles, and behavior. And so I think that though it felt like a swing and a miss, I had lost a client, it also felt incredibly empowering. And it was one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned.
It's fantastic, and there's such a lesson there in doing what's right, in doing what you feel is right. And there are temptations out there, and sometimes you have to pay the bills, and you have to do what's best for you. And so when you can have that clear head, that freedom, that ability to say, look, this isn't the right thing here.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful also. Okay, the final baseball themed question, small ball. What are the little things that add up to the big things for you?
Oh, yeah. You know what? For me, small ball is every single relationship, every single one. You simply don't know how you're going to interact with one another, how you're going to change one another's lives, how you're going to add value for one another over the course of time, every single relationship. You know, when I first began networking intentionally in a 9-month period of time, I asked 205 people to meet with me, and 200 of those 205 said yes. And my little joke is, I know the names of those other 5 people, and I really, really do. But they were irrelevant. It was those 200 people that led me to every new professional opportunity, every new community opportunity, and every purely social opportunity that I've had ever since. It was those 200 people. And so you simply don't know who you might be talking with, the person who you might do business with someday, the person who you might be able to assist with their business. I just think that by valuing every single interaction, every little interaction, whether it's a 15-minute interaction, one of those collisions I talked about, or you sit together for an entire weekend to enjoy one another's company, there are opportunities in every single relationship. And so to me, that's absolutely small ball.
I would sit here and say, wow, we really align. This is amazing, but I already knew that. So, you and I see things so similarly. And I learned so much of this from you as I early on when we connected, when I started my business of understanding. I think oftentimes mine were coffee, 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 lunch, coffee, coffee, happy hour, but that's too long for a title. You get the point. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. And even if that's different right now, which we've talked about. So, phenomenal small ball there. Let's get to my four final questions as we round the bases. First one, lighthearted. You've dealt with it your whole life. How many variations are there of mispronouncing both of your names?
Oh my goodness, Joel. I mean, you get it so right that I hesitate to even bring it up. But I mean, Alana, Elena, Eliana, Alona, that was one of my favorites. So many on Alana. On Miller, lots of things. So what I like to do is I like to say Alana like banana, or Atlanta without the T's, and Mueller like Ferris Bueller. And it seems to work if people remember. What I like to say is that since I was 3 years old, I've used Alana banana, and there are still people who I've known my whole life. And as they're coming toward me and I'm walking toward them, I see them mouth to themselves, banana. And then all of a sudden, Alana. And so I think banana still works.
I'm glad that I get it right, but I'm an announcer. I'm supposed to get these things right. It pains me, absolutely pains me when something like that goes wrong. So that's not an option. Okay, second question as we round the bases. How many coffees typically in a day? I don't even think you drink coffee anymore.
I don't. You're right. I don't drink coffee. I've got my trusty tea right here. How many coffees in a day? I would say that it's usually four. Usually four. So it's just like you described, coffee, coffee, lunch, lunch, coffee, coffee. So it's often coffee, coffee, lunch, coffee, coffee, drinks. And so probably four coffees. We'll separate that, maybe a breakfast and a lunch and drinks after. And even during COVID, I would say that I'm maintaining my my life's purpose here.
Yeah, and Alana is the true example of, you don't have to even like coffee, but tea, lunch, tea, just it doesn't have the right ring
nice
to
of
it.
a ring. Yeah, no, definitely not.
No, coffee, lunch, coffee had the right ring to it. And again, you could find Alana at coffeelunchcoffee.com. Third question, as we round the bases, how much has the concept of coffee, lunch, coffee changed during this pandemic? Where are we going forward with all of this? Because we won't go to as many physical coffees, even when everything gets back to whatever normal is.
I would say it's changed only in that we're doing a lot more virtual coffees, and people are still a little hesitant to eat on camera, which I don't blame them. It's a little awkward. I have had some meals with people in Zoom format or virtual format, and it does feel a little weird to eating your spaghetti in front of the camera. So I think that drinks and coffees are probably the right way to go. But I would say I would encourage people to continue to do, whether it's coffee, lunch, coffee, or one breakfast meeting a week, or an afternoon walk outside. I think that there are still ways for us to come together, whether it's virtual or in an outdoor format.
I don't have a problem with the eating. It's just you start to hear people chewing, because if you were sitting across from them, you wouldn't hear it. But now they're in your ear. They're actually in your ear.
That
and
is
the microphones,
exactly right.
That's the one, unless you can mute and take some bites, that's just my own thing. It's a little bit weird. So I don't mind though people seeing me eating. It's just hearing the chewing, which anyway. Last question, the walk off, and this is the big one, but for those that are either fighting this thing, they're waiting for everything to get back to normal. By the way, there's no such thing as back to normal. There's a new normal, whatever it's going to look like. But how about some strategies for people moving forward that maybe haven't been able to embrace this, or they have and they're looking to kind of freshen things up a little bit and get out of that sort of same redundant routine?
Yeah, several ideas. one quick one is offer to help someone, offer to help anyone. It could be your
Yeah.
next door neighbor, it could be a colleague, it could be a child. Offer to help someone, because then you're really putting yourself to use. It feels good. You can volunteer for an organization that you know and like. You, whether that's to make phone calls, to distribute goodie bags, whatever it is, there's lots of ways to help. And, not to sound like Mr. Rogers, but I really do think that if we look for the helpers, those are the people who are going to be remembered. It's a fabulous way to build social capital, especially in a time when we can't really be together. That's one idea. Another idea is do business together, just like you and I today. Again, this is our business. We're friends outside of our businesses, but what's so nice is to collaborate with people and to actually do work with one another. And I think especially during this time, and Joel, I know you've been a leader in our community on this topic, but in this time where we have a lot of racial unrest, where we're really trying, for me personally, seeking equity in this community is of utmost importance. And we have to make this time count for something. But let's collaborate with one another. I think you've done a fabulous job of getting people from the community involved and talking about some tough topics where we're not always going to understand one another or see eye to eye, but we can come together in a civil approach to having a conversation to say we love each other, we care about each other, we can be together as a community and learn from one another's perspectives and experiences. So that's another thing to do. A fourth thing to do is to host an event. And I know that sounds odd, but here we are. Right now, you're hosting an event. This is the two of us and all of our listeners today. And so what I would encourage people to do is host a happy hour, host an event. A buddy of mine hosted an event. He had 4 speakers. He interviewed each speaker for 15 minutes, kind of a Q&A format. And then the last hour was a happy hour. And he had curated the participants, and he literally went through and gave every single person an opportunity to comment during the happy hour, so that it felt like people were contributing and people were important. And the reason why, because they were. He not only did he make them feel that way, but he enumerated why it was that we should all care that we were on the call together, and how we could add value to one another's lives.
All amazing advice. And I'll just add to all of these discussions that you were talking about, and thanks for the kind words on that. It's meant a lot. Is if you want to learn, listen. And if you listen, you are going to learn. And what an opportunity we have right now to be able to listen to each other. We've never had a better opportunity to be able to listen and learn from each other with the push of a button. I mean, that's opportunity to me.
Absolutely. And I think you have shown us that this is possible, and that people really can come together despite disparate views and experiences, histories, and really make good of a time that has been very disconcerting and difficult for so many people.
Well, you know what? We're a week away from no more political ads, so the world can be a little bit of a better place after that one, and maybe we can all kind of slide into whatever that next norm is going to be, whatever it is. It's not a political discussion, but I think that we are all burned out on a lot of different things. But as you said, the relationships, the people end of things, that can never stop. It never should stop, even if it looks a little bit differently. So, Alana, I appreciate it. I always love every conversation with you. The fact that we get to include others in it to listen in, hopefully is a good thing for everyone. But I loved your perspective, of course, and all of your wisdom and insight. I appreciate you and your friendship, of course, too.
Likewise. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to be with you today.
Thanks, Alana. Alana Muller. Alana like banana and Mueller like Ferris Bueller. I never thought about it that way. Maybe I thought
You
about the banana
nailed
thing.
it.
But I've had some practice at this one. The website is coffeelunchcoffee.com. Alana, thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. That is my good friend, Alana Muller. She is absolutely amazing, and I hope everyone will check out her website. Shout out to my sponsors, Kansas City Audio Visual, Kissick Construction, and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Businesses often come to Enterprise Bank because they demand and frankly are worthy of more than the status quo and need a local partner who understands their business. I'm proud to have them as a sponsor. You can reach me at joelgoldbergmedia.com. Thanks for listening to Rounding the Bases presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. #NoStoppingYou. My name's Joel Goldberg. Catch you next.